Hello to Miss Rideout's English class. I'm Mrs. Travers, and every day Miss Rideout comes in and we talk about the stories that you're reading. And the reason we do that is because both Miss Rideout and I have been teaching ENG for you for so many years, and yet we always find something new to talk about when it comes to these stories, whether it be our favorite part or whether it even be our own perspectives or what stood out to us. And for me, it is so interesting to hear Miss Rideout's perspective, especially when it comes to one of the stories that I never looked at from her perspective was Touching Bottom. And she could go so deep into it. And they would be things that I never sort of touched on or even thought about. And so that's what happened again once we were talking about silk stockings and the idea of Marxism. And so we were just talking about how even in our own society throughout COVID, we can actually see how money gave you power or you had decision-making abilities that other people who didn't have money, they didn't have those same options. They didn't have those opportunities. And so that's really important to pay attention to, is that we're looking at these parts of society, these theories in greater society, like we do in sociology. And then we're looking at this little microcosm of a story and trying to see where those pieces exist. And that is the fun part about English. And you're just getting into it. But once you get into not only your own perspective, but using these perspectives, that's really what is the cool thing that comes out of it, is hearing everybody else's perspective and what they're picking up on and what they like about the stories or what they're analyzing about the stories. So the one thing that came up that Miss Rideout asked me to do was talk about how when we were talking about little Mrs. Summers, right? Why would it use little? It's because of her position in society, right? She is petite. She's a woman. And then we even know she found herself the possessor of what seems like a small amount of money. But we know that based on this very beginning part here, it gave her a feeling of importance that she had not enjoyed for years. She feels little and small. Maybe financially she is. And because of that, she doesn't have much decision making. But for once, she has some money. And what we realize is that she had not enjoyed for years is that she at one time had this money, but has made decisions for whatever reason that she doesn't now have that money. And so she's come into this money and needs to figure out what to do with it. So I'm going to be looking at that situation from a reader response perspective. And I'm sorry if this is all over the place, just kind of talking through some ideas as to my perspective. So what that would be a reader response perspective that I'm using my own biases and my own perspective in order to analyze and figure out this character. Something that you need to know about me then is that I'm in my 40s. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I come from a middle-class working family that didn't have a whole lot of money, but maybe worked really hard and had opportunities because of a variety of situations. So I maybe had different opportunities than other people. So that's what's led me to be where I am right now. So I'm going to look at Mrs. Summers as a mother because that's my perspective, because that's the life that I'm living, that I can't help but look at it from that situation. So one of the questions that Miss Rideout asked me was, do you think she's being selfish? That this idea of how she handles the money. And depending on who you ask and what stage of life they're in, they might say, yes, she was selfish. Her children, her family could have definitely benefited from that money. But she chose to do things such as buying stockings. She bought gloves. She went out for tea. She went to the theater, right? All of these things that it gave us clues along the way that she had done these before and that she's basically just going back to a time where she didn't have these responsibilities. So in the very beginning, we see that she dabbled, right? She was looking at the cheap stockings, and then she touched the silk stockings and wanted those. And then handing them over and looking the cashier, the salesman, and saying, here's the money for these very expensive stockings that I normally wouldn't buy. The feeling that it gave her, because she was doing that for her. And I will tell you, as a mother, there are a lot of times where I would love to go out shopping for myself, but sometimes the needs of your family come first and you make sacrifices along the way. And that's just part of being a part of a family, and the leader in a family, is that you do those things. And so I even identify with her at the movie theater going alone, that she didn't involve anybody else. It was kind of just a moment for her, a moment of quiet. And if you were to talk to Miss Rideout, there's often times when I just want quiet, that I used to talk about hiding with some chocolate in my house so that my kids couldn't find me, or that I hid the chocolate so that it was just mine. And while there may be shock and horror about that I wouldn't share that with my family, for me, it was a little moment in time where I'm just doing something for me. And I identified with her wanting to go to the movie theater, and seeing other people who were doing that at the same time and how they were dressed. And for once, she felt connected to them, that she had left her life of being a mother and trying to be frugal behind, and she was just enjoying a show. And the one thing that Miss Rideout asked me to talk about was the final trolley ride. And I'm just going to see if I can find that down here. So she came out, the crowd filed out. It was like a dream ended. People scattered in all directions, and she went to the corner and waited for the cable car. Here's the key part. A man with keen eyes who sat opposite to her on the cable cart seemed to like the study of her small, pale face. It puzzled him to decipher what he saw there. In truth, he saw nothing unless he were wizard enough to detect a poignant wish, a powerful longing that the cable car would never stop anywhere but go on and on with her forever. She wants to stay in this moment, that for once she felt like she had some power over her life. That when you are a mom, and maybe I'm just playing the martyr here of the mother figure who sacrifices everything for her children, but let me tell you, that's what happens. And it almost is an unconscious decision, but maybe even what's role modeled is that you almost give too much of yourself and give yourself away so that you almost have nothing left. And what she's trying to hold on to is the power and decision making that she got to make all day for herself, that she knows when she steps off of that cable car that all of that is disappearing. And so she has to go back to her old life. And so I was telling Miss Rideout, there was actually many times where, whether it was back from grocery shopping during lockdowns when all you could do grocery shopping, I would often take 2.5 hours. Does it take 2.5 hours to go grocery shopping? No, it doesn't. However, I would go to Wendy's because I'm in Napanee, and I would buy something and just sit and eat and stare at traffic going by, if there even was any. And then I would go in grocery shopping. I would definitely take my time. I would not take my family. And then paying for it and boxing it all up, take my time. And as I pulled into our driveway, I would just sit there before I go in, because when I go in, I'm on and I'm putting away groceries and I'm helping my family, because that's what happens, right? And so for a moment, I take a big deep breath, I clear my head, and I prepare for the role that I'm going in. So, for many of you, you may see Mrs. Summers as selfish because she and her family could have definitely benefited from that money and buying new shoes or getting them a new outfit, getting them some food or whatever it may be. But see, as from a reader response perspective and my own perspective from where I sit right now, I understand Mrs. Summers because she just wanted to live in the moment and stay in that moment. So do I think she was selfish? Maybe a little. But sometimes we don't allow wives and mothers to do that. And instead of being little Mrs. Summers, for maybe once, she felt like somebody. And that's pretty important too to pay attention to. So that power, that money dynamic that we just see in a person, in a character, that's really what you're looking at through Marx's perspective.